This week, I am so excited to have a bunch of members of the MCAA, which is the Minority Coaches Advancement Association. And they're each going to introduce themselves, and we're going to talk about the organization. We're going to talk about why they started the organization and why coaches should join this organization. So why don't you introduce yourself, Archie, and tell me your role in the organization and where you're coaching right now.
So my name is Archie McDaniel, and I serve as the president of the MCAA. Currently, I'm the co-defensive coordinator and inside linebackers coach at Texas State University.
Okay, Van?
I'm Van Malone, and I am the chief financial officer for MCAA, and I am currently the assistant head coach and cornerbacks coach here at Kansas State University.
Okay, Tremaine?
I'm Tremaine Jackson. I am the vice president of the MCAA. Currently, I'm the head football coach at Colorado Mesa University in Grand Junction, Colorado.
Okay, so Archie, can you just tell us just a little bit about the organization and why you started it, or why you gentlemen started it?
So really, the organization started, in all honesty, Jill, over several mornings of eating cereal in the players' lounge when me and Tremaine worked together at Texas State University. Then you compile that with all the conversations the three of us have had, Tremaine, Van, and myself, and just talking about the issues going on in college football today with minority representation. And so, one day we sat there and we said, well, what can we do about it? And the thing that the three of us collectively came up with was this: we don't control who says yes and who says no in the hiring process. But what we do control are two things. We can bring awareness to the issue in the right way. And then secondly, create opportunities for minorities to prepare for these positions of leadership we want. Because our thing is this: it's one thing to want the opportunity, but it's another thing to get the opportunity. And when it comes, you're not ready. And that's the one thing we control. And so we want to be able to control the things we can control and do it to the best of our ability. And so that's our sole purpose, and that's our mission and what we're trying to do each and every day.
Okay, so why would a young coach join the organization? And tell me about how you do prepare coaches for the opportunities that are presented to them.
So for us, a young coach joining our organization would be huge from the standpoint of, number one, networking, getting an opportunity to connect with like-minded men and women who are all striving to accomplish the same thing, and not just collegiate football, but athletics and athletic administration across the board, whether it be high school or it be collegiate athletics. So that's the first thing. Number two is having an opportunity to learn about the issues we're discussing. A lot of people don't know. And that's one thing. A lot of people don't understand or realize from top to bottom, when you speak about collegiate football, there's over 1,200 opportunities for coordinators, and there's less than 200 minorities that sit in those roles. There's over 600 opportunities for head coaches, and there's less than 40 minorities that sit in those roles when you exclude HBCUs. A lot of people don't know that. So just educating yourself on that, and then sitting here saying, okay, I'm 23, 24, just like all of us were at one point, saying, we want to be Tremaine Jackson. We want to be a head coach. We want to be coordinators. We want to be collegiate assistants. Well, how do we do that? Well, I can remember my very first job interview straight out of the gate in college was against a staff room full of college football coaches. And I was transitioning from hanging up my helmet to putting on a whistle. And I was a nervous wreck. So preparing guys for those opportunities for us is huge. And that's the biggest reason why a young man or a young woman should join our organization, to get prepared. And then again, there's strength in numbers. So the more numbers we have to fight this cause, the better opportunities we have to create change.
So let me ask you, there's also people who are just interested in this, in helping your organization, people who can donate money. Can you tell people how they can Number one, donate money. Number two, how do you join? I know I said to you, hey, I'd like to join, but you said your membership wasn't starting till April. So I was like, okay, but I did see that you could donate. So tell us about that. Or Van, I think you're the CFO. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I think that it's important that for sure we have to be able to finance any fight, any endeavor. So anyone who would want to donate to our organization, of course, we are a 501c3 organization, so it would be tax deductible. But to go to our website, mcaa20.com, you can find out information about donating, and we definitely would like to work with anyone who would like to take part in that. But we also are looking for allies, looking for people who advocate for our cause, because like Archie said a second ago, this is not a new fight, right? We have just jumped into it, but this what we call this issue has been present in the world of sports for many years. Yes, there have been great progress. There has been great progress, but not in the terms of diversity, not in terms of diversity in hiring. And so, our passion, our drive is to prepare, to educate coaches, but also to bring awareness. There are other groups, very prominent groups out there, and they do it just in a different way. Our passion is to educate people like yourself, to educate the common sports fan, to educate coaches, and to prepare coaches to be a part, because there are a lot of minority coaches out there, and they are just looking for an opportunity. But like Archie said, it's just important for you, when that opportunity comes, to be prepared.
So why do you think, though, when you look at the statistics, which obviously your organization has, and Tremaine, you might be able to answer this question because you are a head coach, why aren't there more people in leadership roles, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators? I mean, Archie, you are a defensive coordinator. Why aren't there more? What do you think is the underlying, what's going on here? Why is this happening? Why is it still happening?
That's kind of what happened over that bowl of cereal Archie was talking about. It became frustrating, and these guys know I've been trying to become a head coach probably the last 8 years of my career, and I had only been coaching for 7 or 8 years when I decided I wanted to become a head coach. And so in that journey, it took me 14 times before, in some form of an interview, before I was able to get a yes. And probably the last 4 times I finished second. And when you finish second, you finish last, in my opinion. And so just trying to figure out why that was. One thing I can tell you, I've been fortunate enough to be a coordinator over half my career. And I was able to get into that role of coordination because we had a product that people could see, and it was good. And I heard this quote from Coach Malone a long time ago that he got from Tyrone Willingham, and it was, as long as you got a good product, then people can't deny you. And so I took that back in 2008 when he said that, and I tried to make sure that the product was good. And I was very fortunate in my career to be mentored by some great coaches and then have opportunities because of the mentorship and the product. What we see and what I've seen is there's not a lot of minority guys that are prepared to even be coordinators, and they don't have that buddy, that guy, that uncle, that someone really close to them that's going to give them an opportunity and cover them. And speaking in football terms, I'm a defensive guy. I hire my nephew to be my defensive coordinator. If things go bad, I can protect my nephew. And so I can always make sure his product is good. Well, I've seen that throughout offenses, throughout defenses, and just throughout my career. And you have these different trees that get hot and they start producing coaches. Well, if you look at those trees really closely, they don't have a lot of minority representation in those trees. And so depending upon the administrator or whatever's going on in the hiring process that year, that tree gets hot and all those guys in that tree get a job pretty much. Well, that tree doesn't have any minorities. So I think you have to go back to why aren't there any minorities in those trees? Because the product on the field are full of minorities that's helping the tree grow. But when we go into the coaching aspect and when we get a whistle, it doesn't transcribe the same way. And so that's what we're on a mission to find, in my opinion. We're trying to find out, along with preparing guys and making people aware, the kind of underlying deal is finding out why that is. And so, Jill, we hope to have that answer fairly soon, but we still haven't gotten down to the direct core yet.
Well, Van, what do you think the reason is? I mean, you have a lot of experience, a lot of years of experience in coaching, and what do you think this is?
Well, I think when you think of the people who are hiring, right, across the board, the people who are hiring are not minorities. And when you think about the situation that would cause you to have to, most of the time, that will cause you to have to hire a coach, often that's a stressful time, right?
Right. Yeah.
You had to get rid of your coach, right? You were struggling. So, and now there may be some other jobs on the line. And so what you do is you go to what you know. You go to what is most familiar. You go to what you have a relationship with. And so if the people who are doing the hiring are white, then the most comfortable direction to go with that is to hire a white coach. The problem is that we always say this amongst the three of us, is that in diversity there's strength. In diversity of thought there's strength. You limit yourself when you only see one way to do things, and it's in whatever it is in life. When you only see one way to do it, that's very narrow thinking. And so what our drive is to just broaden your scope of thought, right? Diversify the hiring pools. When a coach is hired and you didn't talk to anyone else but this coach, that's for sure the prerogative of whoever is doing the hiring, but it's very limiting. And what we continue to hope for is guardrails to be able to help to do that. Because in the NFL, I was reading an article, you say in the NFL, well, we want a person who has been a coordinator. Guess what? Nothing against any coach who gets any opportunity. But when the parameters are, as we try to develop coaches, when the parameters are, you have to be a coordinator to be the head coach. You have to do this to be the head coach. Those are the parameters. We try to work and help guys to attain those measures. And then all of a sudden you see coaches that don't meet those requirements. You see those coaches get opportunities. Like Tremaine said, it's frustrating. And then when this is not just a situation. This is not just an issue that is sprang up in 19, 20, 21 hiring season. It's been the same. When you look back and research 10, 15, 20 years ago, it's the same. 30 years ago, same deal. And your coaching life, these guys are young at this point. They're not going to be able to coach forever. So the window eventually closes for a young coach.
Yeah. And so what do you think about, there's systemic racism in our country. How much of that is impacting all of this? Because, we have a daughter, she works in Teach for America, and they extensively talk about how in education, we are not being fair. We aren't treating everybody the same. Everything we learn is from more of a white perspective. And so Teach for America, one of their goals is to provide diversity of teaching and educational materials to the students. I mean, that's one of their big missions, right? And she's learned tons about that because she's in that organization and she's a teacher in that organization. So, I mean, what about that?
I think, and I'll let these guys jump in as well, but I think that, again, that is a challenge for our society. That is a challenge for our world, is to step out of your comfort zone, step out of what you know, step out of your music, right? I like to turn the music on this station and that's all I like. Anybody who likes to listen to another station is wrong. No, we have to challenge our thought. We have to broaden our vision, broaden our perspectives. When you give coaches, and we're just talking about coaching, but it travels, you're talking about teaching, it travels through all aspects of our lives. Yes, there is systemic racism in our society. Well, if we can't say it's in our society, but it's not in coaching, right? Because in coaching, there is, man, for all of us, some of the greatest relationships that we've had. And guess what? White coaches, Black coaches, all kinds of Polynesian coaches, Asian coaches, there's all kinds of relationships that we formed, very positive, lifelong relationships. But in our world, we have an issue, right? And the best way, as we've learned in the last few months, the best way for us to grow and get better as a society is to admit where we are, and let's have honest discussions about how to be better.
Well, I feel like this year, for the first time in many, many years, because of what happened with George Floyd, we did have better discussions. But I'm not seeing that we're having an increase in the hiring of like head coaches in the NFL and college. And I really thought this year, and I realize there hasn't been as much turnover as normal because of COVID, but I'm not seeing it.
Well, again, it takes guess what? People are trendy. We're trendy, right? We change clothes, we change with the fads, right? And so, yes, at the moment that the protests were going on, at that moment, the emotions were high. But this is not an emotional operation. Just look at the numbers. It's not emotional. Nobody's mad on this call. It's not an emotional moment. It's a clear statistical measurement. It's clear. And so there's no need to be mad. Just look at the numbers. They don't lie. And so how can we be better? Not emotional. How can we be better? And that's not just a moment. That's not a moment. And I believe Archie said it a few weeks ago. He said, this that we talk about is the same if you win the championship. It's the same if you win no games. It's the same if your starting quarterback gets hurt. It's the same if you switch jobs. It's the same. This is an issue that we have dealt with, that we have faced, and it's there. And the only way it's going to be changed is by diligent work by people like us and people like you, Jill. People who look like you.
Yeah, I know. Everybody has to work together to change things that are not fair in our society. And fairness is a big, I think we all have certain things about ourselves that we feel really passionate about. And I am really into fairness and obviously protection, advocacy, and trust, which if you look at my logo, because I want to protect people in situations where people aren't fair. I don't like it. It's like, I don't know. I think I was just born that way, honestly. Or I had great parents that were the same way. Either, you know what I'm saying?
I would say this, Jill, and me and these two guys, we have a lot of conversations, but I would contend that with everything that happened this past year, I think we're seeing what people really think. I think we're seeing that no matter what happens, we're going to be intentional about doing things the way that we want to do things in the hiring practices and in our profession specifically. And really ain't nothing you can do about it from where I'm sitting. And so I think that's what people that are hiring are telling us with the lack of hires, regardless of how many. I think there were 13 in Division I, 7 in the NFL, and we might 14. We might get one more here in a little bit. I think we got 3 so far. So it's it's, I think that's why the organization is so important, because we are getting people prepared. When you do get in the position of leadership, you cannot lose it. And the way that you cannot lose it is you have to be prepared to even have it in the front end. And so therefore, when you're in it, you can potentially bring somebody else along with you, give them the same preparation that you got, and hopefully we start the trend that way. And then your product is good. And so I think that's where our organization comes into play. This hiring cycle was frustrating, Jill. It was really, really frustrating for me sitting where I'm sitting, because I just knew after June that if there were 5 jobs that came open in Division I, we were going to get 4 of them based off the things that happened. And I was really naive to that. And I shared that with these guys. This is the year we're going to get a chance to prove it. And we didn't. At least we haven't so far. Everybody could resign tomorrow and we get half, I guess. But so I think that's where we come into play as an organization, of getting people prepared to land those positions of leadership. And then hopefully they bring somebody else through the network piece that we provide as well. And we all work together to make the product good so that we can continue to get more minorities in positions of leadership.
Well, I think the other thing, as you know, as a head coach, the responsibilities are probably much different than you even imagined, because all of a sudden, really, you're CEO of a budget, you're CEO of a lot of people, all the players, all the coaches' wives, all the coaches' kids. I mean, you have a lot of responsibility. Mm-hmm. The leadership role is immense. It's tremendous. It's a lot of responsibility. How do we prepare everyone for that situation? And you, Tremaine, as a leader right now and a head coach, how do you prepare people for that situation that are, involved in the Minority Coaches Association, or just anybody who is a minority coach right now?
You do exactly what you do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of the game week, and you put people in those situations in a practice mindset. And I think that's what we've been doing through mock interviews, through sharing the knowledge, just over a Zoom call. We get people that call us and just want to know, how do we get to the certain points that we're all at, and continuously passing that along. I don't look at this any different than we look at ball. All we're doing is coaching people on how to get to certain situations. But the only way to win situational football is to practice situational football. And so we have to constantly practice. And you know this, Jill, if you don't practice 2-minute on Thursday, then you can't be upset when you get in a 2-minute situation in the game and you lose it. You never gave it to them. And so that's all we're doing. We're doing nothing. What we're doing is not chess, it's checkers. It's putting people in those constant situations over and over again, as many times as we can, with people that actually do the job of hiring, so that they can get the most realistic look that they can get. I've been a part of a lot of organizations. That was one of the things that we all talked about. Nobody did that for us. If somebody had given me a mock interview 5 years ago, I probably would have landed or had a trick or two 5 years ago. Instead, it took 14 tries to learn all the tricks. Well, now it's my job to share those tricks and interview tips and things of that nature over those 14 times with our organization and with all minorities. So I think that's how we do it.
Don't you think we also can learn from other leaders? I mean, there's a lot of great leaders in this world.
Sure.
Gandhi was a great leader. Martin Luther King was a great leader. He has a book, The Autobiography of Martin Luther King. Wouldn't we want to study what he did? He had a lot of people follow him.
Well, I think, Jill, that I think that it's there are fabulous, like Tremaine, to take 14 times to get a head coaching job. Tremaine is a tremendous leader, and he's been that. But unfortunately for him, he had 14 opportunities to get told no. And what we're seeing today, though, is that a lot of minority coaches, they don't even get that far, and that is that's not their problem. So if they're not even, so Tremaine and his 14 times, I can put a little blame on Tremaine, right? He eventually learned the tricks, but he was in the room. And what we're trying to do is get coaches, at least get them into the room. If they can get into the room 14 times, right, then we'll be okay with that guy if he got in there 14 times. But if they're not even, and there are some great coaches, there are some great leaders, there are guys with incredible CEO skill sets, leadership skill sets. But if I don't even get him in the room, if he doesn't even get an opportunity to express that, and he, in his frustrated moment, he sees a coach who has done half of what he's done as a coach get into the room, not only get into the room, but have an opportunity to interview. And this is on all levels of football. Our organization, and not only football, but all sports, our organization, we're about to do a mock interview for women's basketball. And we're talking a lot about football, but our organization is comprised of people from all walks of sport. And so we see this issue in all walks of sport. And we just have to, as a society, we have to be better.
Yeah, I agree. So Archie, you are a co-defensive coordinator. Tell me about how you got there. What was your path? If you were talking to a young coach, what did you do to make that happen?
You know, for me, it really was about, and some of the same things we've been saying, you know, Tremaine said it first, you know, we came up under the same tree of mentors, and it started with my product. And then as I got older and matured in the business and started learning some things and growing, I think the biggest thing for me was having the ability to understand what my worth was. You know, I think a lot of times as minorities and see this way more than we'd like to, you know, we get so happy to just have an opportunity to be in the building, you know, and you're afraid to ask for or walk away from an opportunity that you're presented with that doesn't value your work, you know. And as I begin to get older in the profession, I started realizing things I was capable of, areas I need to be better, because you're always trying to grow. But I'm at the place right, and me and Tremaine was actually just talking about this over the past few days, is when I'm in a situation and I get presented with another opportunity, it has to be an opportunity that has the right combination of it's aligned with where I'm ultimately trying to go, and then presents me with something that's fair and shows me my worth. You know, that's key. You know, all three of us have had opportunities where we've walked away from situations that didn't value what we knew we brought to the table. And I don't think you have to not be afraid to do that, you know, if you're in a position to be able to do that. You know, as we sit here and talk, Jill, another thing that's really interesting, you know, as you talk about Tremaine and Van were talking about the trees that are blooming and people come up underneath those trees. I've been very fortunate to work with both of these men at several different institutions. Not only are we board members in this organization, we're the best of friends. Both of these guys were in my weddings, or my wedding, excuse me. All of our.
The second one, I missed that one.
It was actually the third one.
All of our children refer to one another. You know, that for my kids, that's Uncle Van and that's Uncle Jack, and vice versa. Well, when you look at, and again, I go back to numbers, the amount of minorities that have been hired, been fired, and got a second opportunity, that number is really, really small. So not only do you have to make sure you're prepared, you have to understand if Archie McDaniel or Tremaine Jackson or Van Malone fails, the numbers show that that's going to affect a lot of other people. And so, and that type of pressure isn't evenly distributed amongst this profession, in my belief.
I agree.
You know,
I
so,
agree.
you know, that's another area where we have to be one step ahead and one step better. Van Malone was our defensive coordinator at SMU, and not only is he one of my best friends, there wasn't a day went by that I was ever comfortable to the point of, oh, that's Van, that's my boy. I tried to hold myself to the highest standard of professionalism every day because I wanted to do the best job I could for Van Malone, because this might be the only opportunity. And we have an obligation to one another. It was my obligation to make him look like the best defensive coordinator in college football to the best of my ability. And I took that personal. It's no different with Tremaine Jackson. So just having to function within all those different stipulations, you know, can be a challenge. And even now, as the co-coordinator, I look at the same exact way. I'm not the sole play caller. And every day I go to work, I want to make sure that I am viewed in the light of somebody that can be. I want to make sure I'm viewed in the light of, okay, let's find another Archie McDaniel because this guy was really good. Let's find another Van Malone. Let's find another Tremaine Jackson. Because they're going to either try to find another you or they're going to try to avoid another you. It's one or the other, you know, so we just have to try to spin it in a positive way.
Yeah, so it's interesting the way you talk about Van. That tells me Van's a very good leader, because great leaders inspire others to be their best. And you wanted to be your best for Van.
Absolutely.
And so that's what a good leader does. So Van, what opportunities have you had to interview for head coaching jobs?
I've had only one opportunity to interview for a head coaching job, but if I go back to what you just spoke on is the leadership. I coached Tremaine when he was in high school, and when Archie was early in his coaching career, Archie was our GA when we were at Texas A&M together. Mm-hmm. Well, for me as a more seasoned coach, it was important, or it always has been important, to provide good leadership, a good path for leadership for these guys to be able to follow. And I think that it's important that we all, like these guys, are now getting older, right? And so it's important. I've always tried to put into them that you have to turn around and look back, you know, and be able to help the next generation of coach. So yes, I've had opportunity to interview for a head coaching job. And of course I didn't get that job, but it was important, even at that moment, probably in the middle of my career, even at that moment, that I would go in and perform well. Now, when you look at that job, it almost is a mirror of what we're talking about today, because that job at that university, they had never had a minority coach. The conference at that moment, which it wasn't many years ago, but at the moment, the conference had never had a minority head coach. And so we actually had a Black president before this conference got a minority head coach. And when we sit in the year 2021 and we can grab facts like that for as diverse a nation as we have work that we have to do.
Right. Well, my challenge to anybody who's listening is, can we do even 10% better? 10% would increase the amount of people getting the opportunities. So if you tell people I want 50%, they get all freaky, but can we do 10% better? I mean, we've said that to students academically. You can do 10% better. Don't expect an A student to be, nobody expect an F student to be an A student overnight. You know what I'm saying? Right. Can we do 10% better as a society, as an administrator, as a president of the university, to give people opportunities, as a head coach, to give minorities opportunities as an offensive coordinator, as a defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, decision makers within the organization?
Yeah,
that's what's important here.
What we're looking at is in this process, the student didn't turn in the work, so he has a F. And then what he did the next day is he didn't even come to class. He didn't even come to class, right? And so you're really frustrated in this class, and this instructor.
Yeah. So Tremaine, if you're talking to a young coach who's about to interview for a head coaching job, what would you say, what would be the 3 tips that you would tell that particular person?
Dress for the occasion. Because that in our society right now, people think it's okay to not wear a tie. And you see guys with the bloused open shirt. And so I would make sure that he knew that he better have on a tie and he better dress for the occasion. I would tell him to present the plan, secondly. And thirdly, I would tell him to be himself. And what I mean by present the plan is make people understand in that room why you should be the head football coach without talking about football. Because nobody in that room that I've been in was anywhere close to qualified to being able to tell me about the X's and O's. And so therefore, when people understand that they're not qualified to tell you that, they don't talk to you about that. So don't go in thinking you're about to talk about the air raid and the Dave Aranda defense. You're not about to talk about that. Talk about how you're going to run this $1 million organization or whatever level you're interviewing on, could be multi-million-dollar organization, and how you're going to do it in a chronological or a planned out way. And lastly, be yourself, because a lot of people genuinely don't become themselves. And it's no different than you tell a recruit, 48 hours to a recruit is really not enough time to see if he wants to spend the next 4 or 5 years there. And so a 24-hour interview, meeting in Atlanta and sitting down for 6 hours with somebody is not really enough time to really get to know somebody. And so make sure you're yourself and how you're going to be and not somebody else, because you're going to be in the trenches with these people. And so those are 3 things that I learned very, very quickly to make sure when you're talking about that head coaching role.
Yeah, I think one of the questions that gets asked really frequently, they'll say, why this? Like, why this university? Why Kansas State? Why whatever? That's usually their, why do you want to be the head coach here?
Well, you have to be able to tell me that. If
Yes.
you want me to put you in this position, you have to be able to, like Tremaine said, what is your plan for our organization? Archie said just a second ago is that, and when as we've spoken to athletic directors, what they said is, I want to be able to see this person doing this job. And you, in that interview, you have to show those people in that room that, yes, I can do that, right? It happens in the room. So again, that's where we come in, is that we want to get you in the room. It happens in the room. If I can't get in the room, there's no way for me to be able to get the job. And so we're talking about the numbers. It won't happen if we can't get in the room.
Okay, I get it. I get it. So I also get there's still some jobs open and people are going to get interviewed, and we want them to get those jobs. So what I'm saying to all of you to help prepare those men for these interviews, what is it about that school are you passionate about? How are you going to get a recruit to come there? Because if somebody walks in and they're not passionate about your school, then how are you going to convince a player to come there? You got to believe in that university, that community, and it's a feel. I mean, I know, like, if you're at certain schools where you can tell people who just really believe this is the best place for your son to come to college, complete their degree, and excel on the football field. And I do think that passion will come out in an interview. Then they ask you, what's your offensive philosophy? Now, the scary part about that question is, what if your offensive philosophy is not what they want?
Well, then it's not a fit, and that's fine. Everybody would, it's what Tremaine said. You have to be you. You can't, I'm not going to be a wishbone offense. And if that's what you want, then I am setting myself up for misery, right? And if you want me to be a defensive guy and we want to have a 3-down defensive front, there's going to be differences if that's not so you can't be somebody else. You have to be honest about who you are. But guess what? that's where we come in again, is we wouldn't advise a person to go into those type situations that are not a fit, right? We have to do some research before we have to fit the university has to fit the coach, and the coach has to fit the university. Making smart decisions. You don't just go and get into any room, into any interview. You have to put yourself in situations where, like you just said a minute ago, you can be passionate because you believe in this university's opportunity or change.
3 or 3-4, they're a little, little less. Well, Tremaine, what defense did you tell him you were going to run in the interview?
I didn't tell him anything, and I never do.
Really?
And yeah, because the biggest thing for me, and this is, it's to each his own, but the alignment with the university was going to have to match why I coach.
Right.
And so if you're not about students, if you're not about changing lives, if you're not about making sure people that on paper aren't supposed to get degrees are getting degrees from your university, Tremaine Jackson ain't your guy. Because Tremaine Jackson is coming in talking about how coaching is his ministry. Tremaine Jackson is coming in talking about how we're going to play with aggression in everything that we do. We're going to have a dog mentality, being disciplined, obedient, having a lot of grit. That's what Tremaine Jackson is talking about. Tremaine Jackson ain't no air raid guy, and I might have to hire an air raid coordinator if that's what's hot. Because I might change my schematic philosophy, then I don't want to be pinned to one. Because we could say we're 4 down. If we don't have 4 down personnel and I roll out there in game 1 and 3 down, the board of trustees up there saying he told us 4 down, then it just doesn't work. And I think that's why people get fired faster now than they ever have, is because they tie themselves to things that they really don't have knowledge of. It's about being passionate. If you're not about players, I don't think you should coach. If you're not about changing people's lives, I don't think you should coach. And so, personal opinion, could be wrong. But if you're not about that, it ain't going to, if your school is not about that, Tremaine Jackson ain't the interview. And so, do like Coach said, we do that research on the front end to make sure we know enough people in the profession, especially in football. Now, women's basketball, and even on the high school level, we can get some form of info to see if that even aligns with who that person is, and before we even get to that point.
Well, that's an interesting perspective, because I know this gets asked every time.
Well, but I think nobody, you said it, we all understand that the head coach, he doesn't coach. The head coach, he manages people. The head coach manages people inside his program, and he finds a way to manage the people outside his program who want to support his program. So he's a manager. And like Tremaine said, whatever scheme, guess what? If you don't have those players, if you can't recruit those players, if you can't get the right support from your administration, from your donors, who cares about air raid, 3 down, 4 down? All that is just talk, because none of it is going to work. It's about, like, I can be very proud because Tremaine sits on this call, and Tremaine he's my fruit, right? He's my fruit. He looks like a grape right now, but he's my fruit. That purple.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you guys want to talk about that you feel like needs to be discussed right now on my podcast, that's also going to be on my YouTube channel, that we need to share with the world?
Say this, another thing that we've, and it's nothing new, but as we formed our organization and we really started, we hit the ground running, you'd be amazed at how many people in the profession are really afraid to get involved in what we're doing. And that's one thing that we want to continue to stress is there isn't, Tremaine just said it, changing people's lives is his ministry. Well, when we're trying to change lives and change hearts of an entire organization of people throughout the country. Again, there's strength in numbers. Well, I can remember when we first started MCAA and we were publicizing some things on social media. I'll never forget, we got some responses back where people blatantly said, and I'm not going to say the words they used, but they said, hey, you guys are going to lose your careers over this. And those type of things is what causes people to be afraid to join our fight. And I truly believe we're going about this the right way. You know, I truly believe that, and we all do.
You definitely are. And I don't think anybody who's ever been oppressed, okay, should ever sit back and listen to anybody who instills fear tactics in people. This is something I think people do to prevent, they want to keep people down. No, that's just not a good, no, fear is not something to operate your life by. I think being a servant leader, being good to people, being relationship based, great teacher, being a great coach, and having your group excel in the profession is the goal. And there's nothing to be afraid of, right?
Right. Well, I think that it's, and we always talk about this, the fact that if someone is stepping on your toe, there is a way, right? You have every right to say, well, wait a minute, now you're stepping on my toe. You have every right to be able to express that. And what we want to do, not only to coaches, but to our players, even in the moment of social injustice, is to teach our players and educate our coaches on how to constructively operate in these moments, right? How to operate constructively so that we can see change, right? So that we can be a part of positive change. And it's about doing it constructively. What Archie alluded to or he led into is the fear that, a lot of coaches have. And I think that when you put a coach in a position where he's on a staff, and he's on a staff maybe where he is definitely the minority, but there's all white coaches on the staff, and he would be a part of an organization that would say things are not great. Well, the first thing he would be questioned with is, are things not great here? Are things not great here on this staff? So now he has to answer that question. Are things not great here, Coach Jones? What would Coach Jones say? Would he say, well, I wish we had more minority coaches on our staff? Then that would say, well, who do you want to get rid of? Me? You know what I mean? And so it's a really uncomfortable situation, but guess what? We are in the moment of those discussions, right? Because no, things are really good here, but I would like to see more minority coaches, especially if on our team there are a lot of minority players, right? We should move closer to representing the people we're coaching with the people who coach them, right? And I don't think you're saying that's a bad thing. It's a good thing.
And Jill, and to follow what Van is saying, and again, I'm a numbers guy. So when you look at minority representation in collegiate football, which we're talking about right now, the number of just minorities represented is around the mid 40s from a percentage standpoint, which isn't bad. But when you peel back the layers a little bit more and you go to positions of leadership, the coordinator who actually calls the plays, the head coach who's sitting in the big chair in the staff room, that's where there's a large drop off. And so that's, I think a lot of time people get skewed when they say, okay, 40%, 45%, that's not bad. Well, that's not the number we're talking about. We're talking about 624 and there's less than 40. We're talking about over 1,200 and there's less than 200. Those are the numbers we're focusing on.
I get that. I think your numbers are really important. So what I want you to do now is, if somebody wants to get a hold of you to interview you for a head coaching job, for whatever your goals are, how do they get a hold of you? How do they, tell me what if you don't mind sharing, what's your phone numbers, your email, how does somebody get a hold of you?
So my phone number is area code 979-216-8910. And my email is mcdanielarchie@yahoo.com. That is mcdanielarchie@yahoo.com. And I encourage anybody to reach out that, number one, is interested in learning more about our organization,
Okay.
Partnering with us, membership, whatever it may be, and et cetera from there.
Okay.
I always share my email because, there are a lot of young coaches out there who, like Archie talked about, that either want to be a part of the organization or just have questions about what is the next step? How can I advance in my career? And that's any coach. I don't care, minority coach, any coach. And my email address is vmalone39@gmail.com. And my phone number is 785-473-3332. And again, any coach who wants to advance and wants anything I can do to help you, I think that's why we all do what we do, is to help young players, student athletes, but also to help each other as coaches.
My number is 970-210-9308. My email address is Tremaine, Tremaine.Jackson@gmail.com. I'm like these guys. We take a lot of pride in helping. Like we talked about earlier, I think, especially from the role that I'm sitting in, it's my job and my obligation to reach back and give what was given to me. So we certainly look forward to hearing from whoever needs our help and go from there.
Okay, I just want to encourage everybody to join their organization. And if you have any questions, I'd say call any of these men about the organization. I will, in the show notes, put their information, just so if you're listening to this in the car or something, you can go to the show notes in the podcast and the information will be there. If you need to get a hold of me, my email is jillbaxter@me.com, and my cell is 559-250-0151. What I do is I actually represent coaches and players, and I want to protect them, be their advocate and their trusted advisor. But I'm also on a mission to help minority coaches because I think it's really, really important. I felt this way for a long time. I've had several conversations with people, but really haven't done enough about it. So
we appreciate you, Jill.
And so thank you guys so much for being on here. This was a great discussion, and go kill it in recruiting.
Yeah, thank you, Jill.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Y'all have a good one.
All right.